Welcome to the Bodybuilding Banter Podcast, your number one source of all things bodybuilding. Be sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date on future episodes. Now, here's your host, Leroy Rollins.
Hi, man. For those watching, I assume they're going to know who you are, AJ Morris, a new professional natural bodybuilder, and that's kind of what I think the meat and potatoes of this podcast is going to be about. So, my man, welcome back on the podcast.
Thanks very much for having me, mate. I really appreciate it. And with a year like this, it's actually hard to think that I even competed this year. It seems so much in the past, even though it was only like 9-10 weeks ago that I finished competing for 2020. It feels like a bit of a crazy year, but yeah, I guess I do have a pro card now. It's not quite the one that I wanted. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, thanks very much for having the chat, mate. I appreciate it.
I'm glad we could set this up. It's been a while since we actually got to chat formally like this, so it'll be a good little catch up. So you being in the UK, me being in Canada, I think a lot of our timelines as to this whole lockdown COVID crap were pretty similar. But give a rundown of what your prep was like. You were around 30 weeks total, correct?
Oh, yeah. I think it was around about 30 by the end. It was meant to be shorter than that, to be honest, because I originally started prep must have been just before April. I think it was early April that I began. And that was the goal, was to step on stage September 5th. Which would have been my first show of the season, which would have been the UKDFBA Northern qualifier. Because usually in the UK we do qualifiers and then we have a British final. From the British final we go to Worlds. That was my whole plan. Like, we had the whole year mapped out. It was really quite clear on what I wanted to do, what I wanted to achieve. And then obviously, I mean, the very start of the year, even when I started in April, the lockdowns were already happening. I was already having to train at home for the most part of that 3-month or 4-month initial lockdown that we had in the UK, the big long one. And I mean, I got, plenty of kit, just like you did. I know you've created sort of your own little gym now. Got plenty of kit, and like it worked well, but it's just not the same. Especially for me being 5 minutes down the road, or at least then I was 5 minutes down the road from Ultraflex. It's not the same when you have to go and venture out into your cold garage and do movements that I believe offer a huge amount of bang for your buck. But when you're then trying to do things like setting up a cuff around your ankle for a leg extension, and the cuff flies off, and it sounds like a huge third world problem, because I had lots of kit and I was very grateful for it. But when I was prepping for something that I'd worked for essentially like 2.5 years of an off season, all leading up to this point, I was like I almost couldn't believe that it was happening, to be honest, in terms of the fact that the training was really affected. We know the rules and the sort of the guidelines on muscle retention, and that it's not actually that hard to retain muscle when you're taking a muscle through its lengthened and shortened ranges, and we can do that pretty effectively. But for me, mentally, like, that just wasn't enough, because I had such a great stimulus in my normal gym. So that was like the first part of prep. But I was coming down well, and I knew that by looking at different body weights, I knew that I was going to be pretty improved, because I was already hitting body weights that previously I was very, very soft at, and I was already seeing new lines and new detail at like 10, 15 pounds heavier. So I knew I was going to come and improve. So I still wanted to see it through. Obviously, I'm very lucky to be like close friends with Lee, who obviously runs and heads up the UKDFBA. I know you're quite close friends with people in Canada who run WNBF Canada. So, I was in quite frequent talks with Lee about the shows going ahead, and he was always very adamant that there would be a show. And he said, AJ, we will have a show this year. We're not going to let, the federation as a whole down. And he won't, he sort of gave me his word in terms of not letting me down as well, as much as he wouldn't. Even if there wasn't a show, it wouldn't be his fault. But yeah, he made it happen. And I prepped for what eventually turned out to be just one sort of show with them, which was the British finals. And I ended up coming second at that show, which is the show that I really wanted to win. I think, you know, we'll get into a few bits and intricacies. I'm sure you have some questions on why that happened later on, but that was essentially, you know, the prep itself. But when I look back and I see everything that happened and I sort of piece it all together and think about, okay, like actually it was, for what happened in the year, was actually a very good prep. It could have been so much better, which is a shame because, you know, I think I could have looked better. I think I could have had more muscle retained, less stress during the diet, which ultimately led to a block of like 2.5 months, especially, which was extremely high stress. And you know, like stress is the killer of physiques, in my opinion. Like stress just really happened. I think for me, it was probably the best thing that I got out of it was that right at the end when I did that Italy show and I had the success that I did have, sort of like a huge weight off my shoulders in terms of the fact that as much as it wasn't maybe the most optimal preps, my mental resilience paid off. You know, like that's big for a competitor. I think if you're able to be extremely mentally resilient, even if things fall out of optimality, you are going to be able to probably get pretty close to your goals just because you're so damn resilient. Yeah. You know, and that's what 2020, I think, for people that did end up stepping on stage really proved to be was, yeah, you know, the shows weren't the same, and maybe there was some shows that could have had higher caliber of competition. Maybe there was some shows that, you know, could have been, I don't know, you know, you could have looked better or whatever. You made it on stage, and that was probably a huge achievement if you do listen to this and you did prep in 2020 for the whole way through. And equally, I think, you know, people that didn't end up prepping, I believe yourself as well was one of those that chose not to. I can totally see why. And, you know, if I had not prepped this year, I think, I don't know what would have happened, but I think I would have maybe looked at this year or the year after, and I would have been able to avoid some of the things that I had to sort of put myself through this past year. But regardless, mate, it was a good one. And that pretty much sort of wraps up, I think, a general analysis of the prep length and what happened.
It was good for you, obviously, having that relationship with Lee, right? Like you mentioned, I was close with the people that run the WNBF Canada shows. And for me, those shows are all across the country. Anything local was not what I wanted to do. So it was either try to get across the country or try to drive down to the United States. But the border was closed, so that wasn't an option. So there was only one show that was an option for me for what I wanted to do. And then that ended up not panning through, right? So, you know, you're very fortunate in that what you wanted was still able to happen, right? Which is you know, a good hand for yourself, right? That's obviously out of your control. That was just, you know, the forces at will, making sure that you stayed in line with what you wanted, which is good.
Yeah, and it was very lucky, to be honest, because 2 weeks after, well, the weekend I was in Italy, the actual weekend I was in Italy, they went into lockdown. So I was in a gym like the last day any Italian could be in a gym. And the show that I did do with the NBFI, like they had a relatively okay audience. And then literally like the next day, they weren't even allowed to go into a coffee shop, you know, beyond 6 p.m. or something. And now they're in complete lockdown. So it was actually really good timing. Because now we've, you know, it's funny because we spent the whole year as physique athletes saying, oh, well, you know, by October, it will be better. You know, like it's okay. By then, it will be all right. And we've just gone backwards. Like in the UK, especially, we've literally like gone back to where we were in February.
100%.
Like nothing.
Exactly the same here. We're in the same position we were. I think our first big official lockdown was like February, March, and we're right back to square one. Gyms are closed. Restaurants are, you know, pickup only. All non-essential shit is closed. Like we won't get into that, or we'll be here all day. But it's shit.
Yeah. And it's very hard for a coach as well because, you know, like what do we do this year? Everyone's all like, maybe I had so many more people that wanted to compete last year that said, I'll push on to 2021. And then I have loads of people right now that are in very important phases that like they're like these pre-prep phases, which we're setting up that loss. We're making sure that everything's in line with regards to stress management, training, body composition to get them ready for most of their prep starting around about May time. And, 75% of my clients haven't even got a gym to train in. I seem to be lucky. I don't know how I've managed to get away with being in this tiny little bubble of the UK that just seems to be kept open for now. But, it's like I said, we won't get into it too much, but it is very difficult to create strategy at this stage. Like a timeline or a strategy is just like kind of up in the air, which I don't like. And we don't like as coaches, we don't like as physique competitors because we're all about plans and routine and structure. And it just seems like life is impossible to plan or create structure with at the moment, but we'll see.
You mentioned a period of time that was very stressful and, the effects that had on you. I don't know how, behind the scenes, if there was stuff going on, like, do you want to get into any of that stuff, or is it just, we'll leave it as is?
Sure. So I think one of the biggest things as a coach that I always like ask and question people on when they start a prep is like, what's going on in your personal life? Is everything good in your personal life? Is everything solid? And I never really like discussed it on Instagram or anything like that because it's just not worth it. But I had a lot of things happen in my personal life about June time. And yeah, they put a huge amount of stress on my entire prep. Like, luckily enough, I have some amazing friends within my circle. Most named like Meg and Cuba are like my closest friends, and they were extremely helpful during that period. And I would not have gotten on stage if it wasn't for them. In ways and means that I don't need to go into, but they were just literally pivotal in me being able to actually continue to prep. So like the biggest thing that I think listeners can take out of that is that, if you foresee anything happening or anything like rocky that you're going to go through, I just don't bother prepping, because my sleep was trash for like a good 6 weeks. I'd struggle. What's that?
Sleep's like the biggest thing, man.
I
realized, if your training's on point, your diet's good, but you sleep like shit, it's not going to be a good ride.
No, it was terrible. Like, I would struggle to get 4 hours. Like, mate, I felt like rubbish every day, and like the sleep was making the stress worse, and the stress was making the sleep worse. And like I tell all my clients all the time, like all of these variables, sleep, time management, stress, it's all like a domino effect. Like once one falls, everything starts crumbling down, and that's what basically was happening during that time period. And being also prep itself in a calorie deficit, I find that I am at risk of heightened emotions anyway. So like every emotion that you feel is, especially in the start phases, like in the middle of prep, where you are a little bit more hungry, a little bit more irritable, but you can still feel emotions, like they're a bit more heightened. So I was going through that period as well. I'd rather it was actually like took place maybe right at the end when your sleep's trash and you don't feel any emotion anyway. But that's by the by. But these things happen for a reason. And luckily enough, like personal life, business, bodybuilding, everything at the moment is like at an all-time best. And that is almost as like a byproduct of going through that really crap time in order to basically get to where I am now and be in a position where I'm actually very, very happy day to day. So I almost like wish that I was, I'd have been prepping this year, but in actual fact, maybe if I hadn't have prepped, some of those things wouldn't have happened. So, we always say these things, but I'm a big believer that things do happen for a reason. But like I said, listeners taking home bits from this, just try to avoid any big sort of fluctuations in your life, day-to-day work, personal life, career, whatever, whilst you're prepping, because it is much more difficult to handle the bodybuilding side of things when you're on a deficit, and you've got so many more boxes to tick, and management of stress is so important. I mean, even in off season it wouldn't help, but in a prep it's exaggerated so much more. But yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit for anyone thinking of prepping next year or this year.
Yeah, going through shit. So fast forward now, you step on stage, the UK DFBA.
Yeah.
The goal was to obviously walk out with an overall win, I believe, correct?
Yeah, that was definitely the goal. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. So yeah, that was certainly the goal, mate.
So does that overall win get you a WNBF Pro card?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. So the guy that won this year did get his WNBF Pro card.
Mitch, correct?
Yeah, Mitch Jarvis. So he was tremendous, and even if I'd won my class, I wouldn't have been able to beat him. So just very, very well muscled and balanced, and just a lovely physique, well earned. But yeah, that show, like, obviously coming. The thing is, like, obviously stepped up from the juniors to the men's open, so there's always going to be a jump. You know, it's always going to be the next level of muscularity. It was always going to be, I had to be denser. You know, across the board, it was always going to have to be that I was going to have to make improvements. But you know, in some ways, I'm happy with the fact that I did get a second place, because it meant that I didn't get, you know, that instant gratification of, okay, I've done men's open, I've just won, you know, which is what I wanted to do. But when I think about it now, I'm glad that it kind of showed me that I've got, you know, more room to improve and more time to put into things. And it also showed me, it highlighted where I could be better in terms of, you know, making use of my time off away from competing, because immediately upon getting second, I just reverse engineered absolutely everything that I did over the last 2 years. I was like, what could I have done better? And I immediately figured out loads of things I could have done better. I could have been more meticulous with my food, could have been more meticulous with my sleep, could have been better with my training approach. Like for most of 2018, I was training in a very sort of poorly equipped gym. Even like, you know, to the point where in leg extensions and leg curls were just terrible. Like they just didn't offer. I had a better leg curl variation in my garage than I did in the gym back in Brighton at that stage. And then, you know, 2019, for the most part of it, I was spending at a gym in Birmingham, which was, again, it was okay. But then towards the end of 2019, and I genuinely think I made some of the most progress I ever made from like August 2019 until February 2020, because I was in Ultraflex. I was luckily enough at the end of 2019 able to train with Cuba for a while. And, you know, that sort of push in the right direction, and also someone to say, you know, look, AJ, I think you need to tweak this or tweak that, and a bit of a second eye, and obviously a bit of a second eye through the prep as well, really helped, and just sort of turned a leaf a little bit on my approach to things. And then, you know, like I said, getting second allowed me to look back and think, right, okay, cool. I've now got, you know, potentially a year or even 2 years. I think a year, to be honest, because I think looking back 2 years, for me, in some ways, didn't create enough urgency. Like I almost need to know that I'm going to step on stage in like a year's time, and, you know, do a pro debut with the INBA, PNBA, whatever, or go again for the WNBF Pro card. And I need to know that that's there, because I want the pressure. Like I respond quite well to pressure. And that's why I think I did well training wise and also progression wise in the prep, because I had the pressure. Like I need to know that there's a date, or there's something that I'm working towards with an immediate effect. So yeah, but second place also in a very good athlete. So I was, yeah, when I look back on it now, I'm actually okay with it. But in the moment, I wasn't at all, mate. I was very upset.
Yeah, that first initial that sting, you know, you get off stage and you're like, man, you know, especially for yourself, right? You're very you know, public about your goals, as am I, right? So you have not only the pressure on yourself, but you probably got, you know, DM after DM. How'd you place? How'd you do? You're looking good, man. This is it. And then you just got to be like, nope, not today.
Yeah, it was pretty hard, to be honest. I had to make like a story on Instagram about it like the next day, because I basically just left it. Like I did a post and I just left it, because and the annoying thing, Leroy, as well, is that I would have stepped off stage happier. I still wouldn't have been super happy with second, but I stepped off stage happier with second if I knew that I'd look my best. I didn't look my best, and I knew I didn't, and that was so frustrating, because it was even like backstage, like when Ben Howard was helping me like pump up, and I hit a few poses, and I just, when you just don't feel like your best at all. Like I had a few issues that day with my stomach. Like, not that I'm ever gonna like Phil Heath on stage with a gut distended, but like it just didn't feel right. And then also I've talked about this multiple times, but we tried out like a natural diuretic, so like the dandelion root kind of thing, and it just pulled so much. Like, mate, I was just urinating like every like 15-20 minutes. It was stupid, and I'd lost a lot of weight in the carb up. So basically all of my cool. So sorry guys that we got cut off a little bit there. That was my bad if there was a brief pause in proceedings. But basically what I was talking about is I, during the peak week for the UKFBA, trialed using a little bit of like a natural diuretic. I ended up pulling so much intramuscular fluid as well as extracellular fluid. So there was probably like a little bit of extracellular fluid on me. And it's really weird. Like I've heard Cliff talk about this before as well, is that like when you initially introduce something like dandelion root into a natural athlete, like they might look a little bit better initially as the final little bit of extracellular fluid is pulled. So I remember when I put it in, I was like, fucking hell, like I look quite dry, but still full. Yep. And I was obviously in the last few training sessions. And then, when you're getting ready for a show and like you're packing all your stuff and like the final few days, things get a bit busy. I had clients competing. So I started to like send my photos to Cuba and Ben and like pay less attention to them myself. And then I realized, like looking back at them, like towards the end of the week, I just was really, really dropping off in terms of like intramuscular fullness. And I didn't really notice that because I was just looking at condition. And then I ended up dropping from like 163 at the start of peak week, looking pretty good, to 159 on show day. So it was a pretty significant final week drop, some of which probably was from excitement and nerves and things like that, but also the fluid shift, which was obviously a negative fluid shift. So then, stepped on stage and I just knew immediately I just wasn't getting a pump. I wasn't getting as vascular or as full as even like I was when I was upon wake on like 7 days prior. And that was like before stage. So I knew that it wasn't going to be the best look. And for me, as a smaller guy, I'm not like one of the biggest guys yet. I plan to be like up there in terms of size in my class in the future. But right now I'm not up there in terms of the density that some of these older guys do have. And then obviously when you get a guy like the guy that I competed against and who beat me, was a crazy density in his upper body, it's made me look small. So, it highlighted my weaknesses. But I think even if I was at like my best and I was as full as I was for Italy, I still don't think I would have beaten him on that run, because I do think that he had like his balance was a bit off. Like his legs weren't as good as his upper body is, but his upper body was so impressive that it kind of like gave him that little bit of an edge. But I was, again, like I said, happy to take the experience from it, and also really happy that I got an extra 7 days of basically pulling out the natural diuretic and putting up my food quite considerably, and actually looking my best at the Italy show, which went much better. And I was just so much happier with the way that I looked and the way that I posed represented that I was happier with the look as well. So I didn't pose confidently at the UKFBA when I wasn't happy, because I knew that I was trying to play catch up rather than getting up there and being like, here I am kind of thing. This is my best look. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Was the Italy show always in the books?
In terms of like the plan of action?
Yeah.
I mean, from about September onwards, maybe it wasn't September, but it was whenever the Worlds got cancelled, because the plan of action was always to try and qualify for Worlds, right? So win my class and then go to Worlds with the WNBF. But then the WNBF don't have any real shows that I can go to in Europe. Like, not realistic, like they weren't happening. And also none of the American shows, if I wanted to go out there and compete in like the any shows in Boston, any shows in New York, like we were planning to go and do, like I was planning to go and do like the Monster Mash, and then ideally earn my pro card at like one of those shows. But then I can't get to America, and so I couldn't do any of those. I could get to Italy, so we sort of thought, okay, you know, let's go out there. There are a few other reasons why we went there as well, but you know, mainly it was just for me to go and compete, and it was also a cool opportunity to try like another federation, because I mean, I think ultimately, if the way the future heads in the direction that I think it will, I think I'll want to compete long term with the WNBF, because I just think that they have the longest lasting sort of natural bodybuilding history, and I want to be a part of that history. So, and I'm sure you do as well, like you have a similar sort of process. So like when I own the pro card, obviously it's amazing, but at the same time I'm like, okay, this is not exactly what I wanted to achieve. And that just means that the next time I do compete, I've got another goal to achieve, and I'm still like an amateur to be able to achieve that, which I think is quite cool, because you only get to be an amateur once, and it doesn't last for long for a lot of people. So it's important that I actually enjoy my time as an amateur and just learn from my mistakes. So yeah, and it takes a lot of people a long time to even get to top 3 at a British level. So I'm quite happy to have done that sort of straight away out of the junior class.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you know, people that want to turn pro so fast, and then all of a sudden their high level amateur status goes to a low level pro status, and I think that can be a bit of a hit to your ego, right? So
too right, yeah.
You know, people rushing to do that.
Yeah,
maybe slow down a little bit and enjoy your first place at the local events for a while, right?
I agree totally. Like that's the problem I think with too many pro cards being offered, is that there's a lot of pros getting pro cards that just won't do anything in the pro ranks. Right? I want to be able to earn my pro card if I do earn it in the WNBF, and then be able to go to Worlds and actually like place top 5 in the pro class, which I think is possible within the next 5 years. So I'm just got to keep working, really. And yeah, I mean, I think you get just better and better as you age as a natural bodybuilder, especially, you know, with the longevity in the sport being a little longer than maybe assisted bodybuilding. I think I've just got to be patient, and even if it does take into like late 20s to be able to achieve the end goal, then so be it. You know, there's plenty of great WNBF pros are in their early 30s, mid 30s, early 40s, you know, so we've got plenty of years. We just got to stay, you know, injury free, and hopefully, you know, by the time we're in our early 40s, we'll actually be able to have spectators at the show as well.
Ideally, this shit's over, done with in the next year, right?
There'll be another one, mate, so it's all fine.
We looked into the OCB up to the Yorton Cup. Does that ever interest you at all?
The Yorton Cup, definitely. Obviously the OCB is the Yorton Cup and the OCB sort of go hand in hand as the sort of one of the top tier shows. But the OCB outside of the Yorton Cup, no, I haven't really looked into too much. No, but there is no like OCB affiliate in the UK as far as I'm aware. So yeah, I've not really had any sort of clients or fellow competitors that I've seen do many OCB shows either. Are they like prominent in Canada, or are they just US based?
US.
Just US based. Yeah, that's what I thought.
You mentioned in one of your videos the natural Olympia. Is that a box that you hope to tick off? You know, when you
yeah, I think I will do it one day. It depends as to like, so if I don't know whether there's any way I can work around this, but according to the INBA, PNBA, I've got to compete this year to be able to retain like the pro card. So like you lose eligibility if you don't compete within 1 year. So if I can't like work a way around that with COVID, because I'm sure that I can like, you know, say something like I can't compete or something like that because of the restrictions or something like that. I'm sure there's a way I can work around it. But if I can't, then I'll just try and earn it again at some point and do the Natural Olympics. I think it would be cool to do that show because it is one of the biggest natural bodybuilding shows in the world, and you can't argue that some of the best of it ever have competed there. You know, Philip Ricardo Jr. and things like that. And yeah, I'd like to do. I'd like to see what it's like. I've heard mixed reviews as to things like that in the amateur section. I've heard some people have some bad experiences, but again, you'll have that everywhere. You know, I'm sure that people, when they went to Worlds and it was like practically like a 3-day event, and some people were stepping on stage at like 2:30 a.m. in 2019. I'm sure some competitors that aren't as passionate about bodybuilding as we are would have some complaints about that. I mean, I personally wouldn't give a damn because the amount of effort and time that goes into running a show like that is ridiculous. And if it's a bit off time, then if you're complaining, then you should be the one trying to run the show, to be honest, because it's probably very, very difficult. But yeah, I'd like to go and do that show again. I'm like game for any show, to be honest. I'm not like sort of, well, I lie. Like, I think in the UK, like I'm very much sort of loyal to the UK FBA because I'm so close with Lee, and I really do like believe in what he's trying to do and where that federation is trying to go. So if I was to ever compete again, if I am competing in the UK, it will be with him. But outside of that, you know, I'm sort of a free roller. I'm happy to go wherever and try out different shows. Yep. So yeah, it's exciting.
All right, man. Let's close this out with the 2021, I guess, tentative game plan.
Okay.
We're into the new year. It's January. Where's the year headed for you right now, anyways?
Yeah. So first of all, training's going very, very well because performance on everything besides 1 or 2 presses is actually surpassing my previous best off-season numbers. And you probably know this because you've been following me for so long. You probably know what some of my last numbers kind of were in the last off-season. So yeah, I'm a little bit off on my presses, which is kind of down to body weight. I'm still like 20 pounds lighter than I was at the top of my last off season, and conditions still good. I've uploaded like 1 or 2 progress updates, but in the off season, I'm more of a fan of just uploading more training footage than the physique side of things, and like save the look and what I've earned during the prep, because then people get to see, oh, okay, this equals this. You know what I mean? But I'm not pretending that I can be like Dorian Yates and just hide away and pretend that I'm some sort of like elite athlete. But yeah, so performance really good. Food's in a good spot. I'm not like that hungry or anything like that at this present moment in time. Like, don't get me wrong, I've got an appetite and the appetite will stay there for a while, but I'm not like excessively food focused or anything like that at this stage, which is a nice place to be. So that's all good. And then goals wise, obviously just get as strong as possible. And hopefully that, you know, I still have access to a training facility over these sort of periods of time where, you know, some people don't. If you're listening to this and you don't, try and, you know, make as much as you can of the sort of the environment that you've got, whether it's even just body weight. I'm confident that you can do something that stimulates muscle. As difficult as it is. And and then I think body weight wise, I'd like to just get as heavy as I can within reason. I'm a big believer that I think you should get like decently heavy in the off season. It worked for me last time. I just need to make sure that I maintain a little bit more fitness and a little bit more structure as I push up, rather than losing some of that. So that's what I kind of lost last time, was a bit of the structure and the consistency aspect of things with the food. So I'd like to basically just maintain all of my prep habits, essentially, all of the things that create structure and routine, but then just apply it to being heavier. So, and that's going well so far. Like, I haven't lost out on a day so far. And I've been in, like, you know, living in Dubai for a month and things like that. So it's been very, very good. And I'm lucky. So I think there's been so many distractions that it's not really allowed me to think too much about whether I'm tired or whether I'm got post-prep blues or fatigue. There's just too much going on for me to even think about those things. So it's made the transition to off-season actually very easy. So yeah, I'd recommend just like, you know, if you're wanting to transition easy, just try to, in post-prep, go to Dubai in a pandemic, and then also just move out as well. Like, it's just so many actions that you just can't fathom anything negative.
Congrats on the house, by the way.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, it's cool. I'm very happy with it, to be honest. So it's another big sort of step as part of like building my own business and building my own little empire. That I think for 2021 as well, it's just the continuation of growing, not just the coaching. I think the coaching at the moment is at a point where I can be quite picky and selective with who I coach, which is nice. And I feel like I'm very financially stable with that side of things now, which I'm really, really grateful about. But obviously it took, you know, years and years of hard work. But I want to grow sort of the other areas now, like the clothing. I want to do more with the Be Epic kind of thing. I really want to just invest time into everything possible, you know, growing. I think the YouTube is an exciting prospect for me as well, because that seems to be going well. But also that's, you know, whilst that doesn't earn any money, all of the money that I earn from the clothing goes back into the YouTube. Well, not all of it, but like some of it goes back into the YouTube and the content creation, because then that only levels up the clothing, because it's all like it's all a funnel. So that's what people.
Brand awareness, right? I know you like Gary V, as do I.
Yeah.
It's all about brand awareness. It's the hat, it's the shirt, it's, you know, it's everything, right? It all kind of funnels into itself, and it might not make you $1 now, but all of a sudden that client that watches your YouTube videos the last 6 months is like, hey man, you know, I've been watching you and I want to hire you, and all of a sudden it all paid off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what people don't really understand with YouTube, is that they're like, oh well, I don't make much money off YouTube. I'm like, but you do. You just don't make it from YouTube. You make it from the funnel that YouTube is. So, but yeah. Anyway, man, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat.
All right, people. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate everybody watching. Obviously, I'm sure most of you watching this are following AJ, but if not, where can they find you, buddy?
So I'm just on Instagram at AJ Morris _, and then my YouTube, if you just search AJ Morris, you'll find it on there, and that's where I'm most active. So, but yeah, I appreciate everyone that listens, and anyone that's got like a specific question, either buzz me on Instagram. I'm always happy to answer, or alternatively head over to my forum, my log on Trained by JP, which is my sponsor for clothing and nutrition, and check out their clothing, check out the nutrition there, the supplements. And check out my log, and that's a great place to ask any in-depth questions, because I log in there every day, and I make sure that anyone that asks a question gets a really in-depth response. So yeah, cheers guys.
All right, people, thanks. We'll see you guys in the next one.